I think that's the kind of biggest story really, coming out of the G7. The other big topic, I guess, really is the kind of running sore, if I can call it that, of Bakhmut, where there's kind of claims and counterclaims. But on F-16s, I mean, this is significant. We've all been talking about, when will fast jets be come onto the table. It was tanks, now it's F-16s. I mean, I think the difficulties are rather like the conversation was around tanks, in that we've talked about it for so long, and all the time we've been talking, the Ukrainians have been fighting and frankly dying, and we've got there eventually. But it does feel like a little bit like tanks.
Mm.
This is a decision that could, indeed, perhaps should have been taken some months ago, because yes, we've now got a declaration that we F-16s. What's not clear is the when, the where, the how, the who they'll come from.
Yes.
But no matter what that sourcing is, it's going to take a significant amount of months before you've got F-16 Ukrainian pilots fighting over their homeland.
Yeah, but the big change was Joe Biden swinging behind the idea of training Ukrainian pilots in the use of F-16 jets, and even nodding towards the supply of those jets, whether from America or from other countries like the Netherlands and elsewhere. That looks like a game changer. Look, you're a soldier, I know, Rupert, not an airman, but just tell us about the importance of an F-16.
Yeah, no, and in a way, the soldiers' view of the F-16 is really important, because this is a kind of ground war first and foremost, and so it's how the F-16s can firstly protect their homeland, but secondly support their ground forces. So look, the F-16 is ubiquitous. It's on wide export around the world. It's a relatively straightforward to use aircraft. Many airmen will be scoffing at me at this point, but there are a great many more aircraft that are harder to use, that are more technically advanced. So the F-16, in a way, is relatively cheap and cheerful. It's in use in a great many countries around the world, and that's why it's significant that the Americans say it can now be provided, because that opens the door for nations who have it, such as the Netherlands,
Yes.
to potentially pass on their F-16s. So what's the point about the F-16? Well, it can see much further than the Russian aircrafts on offer, and it can strike more readily. It has a simpler engagement methodology, so it starts to give the Ukrainians a real air advantage over the Russians, who are using much older aircraft. And if the Ukrainians can begin to turn the tide in the air, that creates the conditions on the ground.
Right. And it would not be used, or at least the Americans are stipulating it would not be used over Russian airspace for reasons we understand. They don't want to see that kind of obvious escalation, but it still leaves wriggle room, as it were, for Ukraine. They have their own aircraft who can be used maybe more liberally.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the naysayers have been saying, look, to use an aircraft like the F-16, it's very advanced. It's got to be used in part of a kind of really sophisticated package of air power, as we might have done. As if you think back to wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. But what the Ukrainians have demonstrated is that they're absolutely the masters of innovation. And so if you put the F-16 into their hands, I think we should expect them to use them in a really unconventional way that we in the West might well in turn learn from.
Right. Now another shift in the climate, as it were, over very recent days was the role of Volodymyr Zelensky appearing at the G7 summit, appearing at the Arab League. He was being embraced by the international community in a much more open and warmer way than hitherto.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really significant, isn't it, that he's increasingly feeling able to travel more and more out of Ukraine. He's been the master throughout this campaign, throughout this war, at the international messaging, getting the international community behind him. He's been frankly inspirational at that, but it is telling that he feels able to jump on a plane, fly halfway across the world to speak to the G7 in person, as a for instance, and this really strong message of unity. And that's quite something, because we have all been talking, haven't we, over the months, about at what point will the West get tired of this? The amount of commitment it's having to give. We're all suffering, in our bank balances, and yet here we are in May of the second year of the war, and unity seems stronger than ever. And it's so important that that remains the case.